Hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Career Ladder podcast, where we dive deep into the career journeys of revenue-focused professionals to give you real insights, actionable tips, and maybe even a little reassurance that the journey is yours to define. In this episode, I'm joined by David Wilkins, and we're going to be chatting about his journey from bookseller to founder, which is a slightly different, or it's a departure from the previous conversations I've had, because the majority of people I've spoken to seem to start in fast food restaurants. So I think you're winning so far, bookseller to founder. But without further ado, how are you, David?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, I was very lucky and started in a bookshop versus McDonald's or anything else like that. So
Less
yeah,
greasy.
yeah, it was Leicester. Who knows?
Well, yeah, it depends. I guess it depends who you're selling books to, really,
Yeah, there
doesn't
you
it?
go. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So tell us a little bit about that first ever job then, bookseller. I know it's a pretty simple concept, but how old were you? How long did you do it? Why did you choose to be a bookseller?
Yeah, so I did my work experience there when I was 15, and it's the shop in the middle of the city, the bookshop in the middle of the city, and yeah, they offered me a job after I turned 16, and so the week after my 16th birthday, I was working there every Saturday, and it was it was quite a eye opening experience because where I'm from in Leicestershire, it's a village out in the countryside, um, very closeted environment, and then you come into the city in Leicester, and then working there, and it's like, oh, okay, this is how people really are, and it was fascinating. There were so many characters, the people that came in that had published their own book and were very angry that it wasn't on the bookshelves, but because it was really bad. And yeah, we just learning what human behavior and about what people are really like. It was quite an eye opener at 16.
So thankfully, though, you were learning about human behavior in a bookshop rather than a fast food restaurant. I can imagine they're wildly different experiences of human behavior.
You know, it got a little bit tense sometimes when the same woman came into the bookshop every week asking about
She
why I
wasn't.
was.
She wasn't called Karen, was she?
No, she's very posh. Like, it stood out in Leicester. Like, what's she doing coming here? And I think in the end, one of the more senior people had to say to her, like, "We're not gonna sell your book. It's not very good." And so that went down well.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm a fan of I'm allowed to say it's Waterstones, but I'm a fan of the Waterstones. They good cafe, good vibes.
Yeah, it was good, and then but they've shut the one down now in Leicester. There used to be this really nice one, massive 3-story building, and then they shut it down.
Well, you
And
know why? It was because that posh lady ended up burning the place down because she wouldn't publish her book and put it on the shelves.
oh, yeah, it was like some real pretentious name as well. It was hilarious, and it's just like, what? How do you spell?
Patricia or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it was like, how do you even spell the name of what you're trying to?
Ophelia. I don't know.
Yeah,
Or oh, you mean the name of the book rather than the
yeah,
name of the
and her
author?
name as well. It was all very long, all very
Probably double-barreled. Yeah.
double-barreled, lots of syllables. For a dyslexic guy, not a good thing to try and find.
I can imagine. Right, enough about Ophelia, Patricia, Karen, whatever she's called. So that was your first ever job, like you said, whilst you were at university. What was your first sort of highlight role that you thought back to when you were running through this form that we get people to complete? What was the first sort of, I guess you would call it like milestone role that you had in your career that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I I've got a very strange background where I worked in a bookshop when I was at the school. I played quite a good level of rugby when I was at school. My degree was in politics, and then I left university in 2009, graduated, and moved to the Netherlands to coach kids rugby, just because that's what I love to do. I played rugby over here in the Netherlands as well. And then in 2011, I I moved back to the UK. I thought I should get a real job, become a teacher. And so 2013, I moved to a kind of milestone role, was working at a private school as a rugby coach and a PE teacher. Just this place that was like Hogwarts, but it was full of monks instead of wizards. Just being in that environment, that was a real big milestone for me.
Now, you mentioned there that it was you played up to a relatively high standard, and it was a passion of yours. But is that the main reason for picking that? Like, why did you decide to go from selling books, a degree in politics, and then, you know what, I'm going to ignore the degree, or not necessarily ignore, but you're gonna pursue the passion rather than the education? What was the decision?
Well, there was no jobs. It was
Right.
it was just in the financial crisis in '08. So when I was at university, I did my Erasmus, which was the kind of 6 month. You could do a 6 month stint in a European university. So I did it in Amsterdam, and I played rugby over here in Amsterdam as well. When my coach moved clubs after I graduated, I moved with him and played rugby there. And then I've always loved coaching. I've always loved helping develop people. That's always been a huge thing for me, and what I get my energy from. And I just was like, well, what better place than just being able to coach rugby all day and be in that environment. And it was just something that I felt like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my career. Really liked it, so I just thought, well, just go to that environment.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because we often talk. Well, in the episodes that we've done so far, we've spoken about moving for money. We've spoken with people who move for just pure career development, for a challenge, but we've not had someone mention economic climate, which is, again, like, we've come off the back of COVID, and it's been particularly challenging, especially for SaaS. But sometimes you have to make decisions, perhaps that you wouldn't have made in more optimal economic situations. But yeah, it's an interesting motivation for a career choice.
Yeah, I mean, there was no jobs when I graduated in 2009, and luckily I'd gone to the Netherlands the year before and moved, and then be able to find a job in the Netherlands coaching and living a good having a good standard of living over here. It was, and I just never moved back. Really,
Now,
apart from years.
what were the so how long did you do that? How long were you at that school? How long were you rugby coach teaching?
It was 12 months. I was there.
12 months. In those 12 months, then, what would you say were your sort of key learnings from that period? Given that this was potentially your first, I do the inverted commas, the first proper role.
About the real world, and being part of a group of people who were ego driven, and how to navigate that, and learning about the politics of the real world as well. That's what it taught me.
So, degree in politics, bookseller, and then coach. Would you say at that, how old were you at that point? First off,
24.
24. Okay.
24.
Yeah, because I think back to when I was that age, and there was certainly a degree of naivety that I had at that age of, perhaps it's going through the school system, university, and what they almost instill in you in terms of what you can expect after going through a degree, because obviously they're there to say that a degree is the best thing that you can do for your potential career.
Yeah.
So would you say that you had naivety in terms of how the professional world should work?
No, it was more so naivety to human behaviour, and thinking that you can trust everybody.
People are nicer than people should. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I think I suffer quite badly from dyslexia, so it's always been a struggle for me in my studies. Um, I had to repeat a year at sixth form because I just failed my first year of sixth form. I had to move schools. I had worked really hard to get A levels. Worked really hard to get the degree that I got. So that piece, I knew the hard work. Uh, I knew it was hard work, but I suppose it's that more that trusting of humans and human behaviours and what are they trying to get out of a situation. That's what it really taught me.
You've kind of alluded to the fact that it was a private school, like Hogwarts. So I've got a certain image in my head, but I've got the notes up here as well. So it was also a Catholic school. So the reason I want to talk about this is because my mum works in a Catholic school, so I know a certain degree of how different a Catholic school is in terms of like mass and well, I guess just the religious side of things. So
Yeah.
what was it? What did you learn being in that sort of environment?
I loved that. That was great. That was so. I was working in a house, one of the boys' houses. I ended up being an assistant housemaster for a little bit as well, and that piece, that pastoral piece, I really liked, and I think it gave a lot of purpose to people, especially as if you've got a group of 120 boys in a house, they're away from their families, um, just giving them something to like a normal life, or giving the ability for people to give them a compass to their life as well. I think it was really good, and yeah, I enjoyed that bit. I was I can imagine if I'd stayed, I would have ended up getting confirmed. Um, I think that was going to happen, but I just decided to move over here and move on.
Yeah, and you said that was 12 months. Was it that it was a 12-month placement, or was it that you felt after 12 months you wanted a change?
Yeah, I'd spent so I'd spent 2 years. I had another role before this the role we're discussing. 2 years back in the UK, and I just realised like, nah, I don't like it here. I I prefer living in the Netherlands. So I just moved. I was just like, right, I'm going to go.
And you're still in the Netherlands, right? You live in Amsterdam.
Yeah, I just lived outside of Amsterdam. So 2013, I moved back, and yeah, haven't moved away since.
How's the foreign language?
Oh, heel goed man, ja. Ik kan spreken heel goed Nederland. No,
I mean, it
okay.
sounds pretty authentic.
Yeah,
You could, I don't know what you said, but
could have absolutely said anything there, and that's
yeah.
about as much as I could say as well. So, yeah, it's no, I'm typical Brit, and I live in a foreign country, and I can barely speak the language. My wife's Dutch. She, yeah, is not happy. So,
In our defense,
yeah,
when we say that pretty much everyone speaks English, we're not wrong. Pretty much everyone speaks English. It's not our fault that we happen to be born in the country of a language where, that people have adopted globally, right? It's not
yeah.
our fault.
No, and I've tried to say this before to people, and it doesn't. I don't get the best of reactions to it, and especially like in the Netherlands right now, there's a real right wing further building up, and so it's yeah. I think I'm trying to learn Dutch now, so I don't get
Keeping your head down, yeah.
don't get kicked out. So that's my goal.
So when you decided to move back to the Netherlands, you obviously had to change role. So what was the next role? What's the next role that you wanted to talk about in that career journey?
Yeah. So when fortunate or unfortunate, when I decided I was going to move back to the Netherlands, I ended up writing off my car because I was driving down the moors, and I forgot about deer and headlights, and thinking that if I flashed my headlights, they would move, and they didn't. So I took out 4 deer running across the road.
Not just one, then, or four.
it was horrendous. Like it was. Luckily, there was somebody driving past who could trust me, like believe the story. It was really bad, middle of nowhere.
I was going to say, yeah, try telling the police that it was deer that you hit when your car looks like you've ploughed through a crowd of people.
Yeah, and yeah, it was. God, yeah, I just remember it now. It was just like bad. Anyway, so I wrote off my car, took that money with me to the Netherlands. I crashed at a friend's place, Remy's house, for a few months, and then just tried to figure out what to do with my life. And so I ended up working at a mayonnaise factory here in actually not that far from where I live now. Just working 8-hour shifts, just trying to make ends meet, and that was yeah, I was just trying to do anything just to try and survive. Worked at a clothes picking factory for a bit. It was just all that kind of heavy labor, kind of stuff, and but I started trying to apply for roles. Just I had no idea. Just get my CV out there to recruiters. Um, yeah, just it was just really interesting about who responded or who didn't respond. So I don't know, I don't hold that many grudges, but there's one recruiting company in the Netherlands that I'll never do any work with ever, because I gave them my CV and they just never responded to me. And but there was one that did, and they said, we have this role. It's called a business development representative. Do you know what that is? I was like, no. And then that is for this company called Palo Alto Networks. Have you ever heard of them? No, no idea. They'd IPO'd the year before. They were like the hottest company in the world. And yeah, just they took a chance on me. They said, like, you've got no sales experience, but you've got all these intangibles of coaching and communicating, and my phone voice was also a positive. So they managed to get me an interview with this company, and that started out my proper professional real world jobs.
Yeah, I can imagine it was. I don't know what the job was in between the others, but in terms of a recruiter looking at your CV, there, okay, right, bookseller, rugby coach at a Catholic school,
Yeah,
and now he's looking for roles. I can imagine they're looking at that, going, right, where can we place this chap? But when you think about the actual, assistant house, whatever, 120 kids, kind of like a unruly sales team.
yeah,
Yeah, trying to convince kids to do things that they don't want to do, like sales, right? So
yeah,
there are actually quite a few, like you said, tangibles in there that
yeah,
would work well for sales.
yeah, exactly. And I'd had a really bad experience of being a telesales person years before, and it's something I don't really talk about because I quit.
What were you selling? That's the only question I'll ask.
Event
Okay, yeah.
spaces for C-level people, uh, and I lasted a week, and I don't know how I managed to last a week until I quit. And so I thought all sales jobs were going to be like that. So I just was like, oh, business development rep, that sounds like it's the same thing. But yeah, and then just started out there. It was hilarious.
So you, obviously, I take it you took that job. You thought, that sounds pretty good. I can see myself being a business development representative.
Yeah.
Um, the only other question that's floating around my head is, did you get free mayonnaise?
No, it was horrendous.
That
It
is
was,
horrendous.
they just like it was mayonnaise, ketchup, any sauce that you want. That any sauce in the Netherlands is most basically made there and packaged there. Margarine, no freebies. Horrendous.
That's tragic, because that there's this just recurring thought of things that I would put mayonnaise on going through my head. But anyway, back to the career journey conversation. So you were presented this BDR role at Palo Alto. You took the role. Talk to us a bit about the role.
Yeah. So as I said, I took having. Consequence of things that happened in the past, I'd started having a bit of trust issues with people, and it told me in the interview process, oh, you go to San Francisco for training, and I was like, yeah, sure, okay. bet I do. And then I started working, and they were like, Dave, why have you not booked your flight and your hotels? You're leaving in 2 weeks. And I was like, oh, you actually were being serious. So that made me realize, okay, this is actually I'm in a different world now where they'll just splash out however many thousands of dollars to do that. And so it was opening my eyes to this kind of tech world, about how it works, about the processes. Um, it was in office 5 days a week, old pre 2019 kind of environment. It was incredible to be a part of.
And in terms of like how long were you there? Like, talk to us about at least at that company. Were you in the same role the entire time? Did you progress? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I was in the same role for the whole time I was there. One thing that happened was that I got really badly concussed playing rugby about 3 or 4 months in. So that really affected my work and my behaviour. So like I basically retired from playing rugby after that, when that happened. So I wasn't the nicest of people because my brain was just not working properly, and so I decided to after about nine months I decided to move to a different role. Another company approached me, offered me double my salary, so I was like, sure. I think it was time for me to move on.
So in that period with Palo Alto, despite the fact you had concussion, 9 months from my experience in working in recruiting companies, sales companies, 9-ish months, right? If you haven't billed in the first 6 to 9 months, that sort of realm, that's generally the point at which they expect people to start billing, like between 6 and 9 months, if you haven't before that.
Yeah.
So, the concussion you said was 4 months in. So the symptoms of I'm fortunate I've not experienced concussion before. So in terms of how that impacted you, you said your mood changed. How else did it impact you in terms of the day-to-day of a BDR role?
Yeah, so my quota was I was doing very I was my mood was bad, but my I was still performing very well. I was overachieving month over month. It got to a point where my quota was being increased month over month, and I was still beating it. Uh, but just my so that kind of professional piece was fine. It was just more of me in general, just very a bit abrupt. Not
Yeah, so you were business orientated, very direct, straight to the point. But in terms of empathy and emotion, it was I mean, I can relate to that.
yeah.
But okay, so what did you, aside from the concussion impacting things, what did you learn in that 9 months? Because that was your first foray into SaaS and tech, and you mentioned about the money and things like that. What else did you learn in that 9 months?
Really learn about how a deal started to learn about how a deal is constructed and about what's involved. And it's not just David going to Jamie and saying, buy my thing, and Jamie saying yes, and Jamie giving me a check, and that's it. And really starting to learn, okay, what's needed, how many people we need to talk to, how we do negotiation, how we do objection handling. It was really learning those kind of basic skills, and also it was a time when phone was still the only thing we used. We didn't use email or anything like that, so it was just calling. And yeah, Palo Alto was a very sexy brand, so that helped. But we were just making dials all day, and just really getting in, building that muscle.
I gotta say, I think. Do you think it was better before all of the email and LinkedIn came into play, when it was just the simplicity of even playing field of cold calling?
Yeah, because it's like I always used to say it's like an onion. Like even so, when I started 10 years ago, 11 years ago, it was there was only one layer. It was calling, some email, but it was mostly calling. But now there's just all these other layers built up for it as an SDR, and so it's taking you harder to get to the core of what you're trying to do, which is book a meeting, because of all these other layers that are over you getting to that meeting. Yeah, that's a whole other podcast.
I'm kind of thinking, when you've only really got the choice of one core channel, that it then comes more down to the skill and the development of the individual cold calling, which in a way is probably not easier, but it's more clear in terms of how you hone your skills. It's right, I need to get better at cold calling, not, oh God, right, I'm not very good at cold calling, maybe I should try LinkedIn, or maybe I should try email. And then what you end up getting is a one-dimensional rep who's brilliant at LinkedIn but can't cold call for the life of them.
I think the big thing that people are going to realize when it's too late is those that are great at booking meetings on LinkedIn and on email, fantastic, good for you. You hit your number. But when you're selling something, you have to be able to respond to people in real time. And if somebody asks you an objection and you go, let me email you, like, it doesn't, that, no, you lose trust, you don't build rapport, you're not going to win the deal. And I think there's going to be this huge, there's going to be this reckoning, I think, with a lot of reps that are championing, I don't have to do any cold calls, blah, blah, blah. They want to progress to an AE. They'll become an AE because they hit their number, but they will get found out and chewed out because they just can't speak to a human.
Which, as we all know, is a skill that seems to be deteriorating with each new generation.
Oh, the youth.
I'm 32, but even now I find myself saying, back in my day, the youth don't know how easy they've got it. So I can't imagine how bitter and resentful I'll be at age 60, but there we go.
Well, yeah, look forward to that.
So just out of curiosity, actually, what were you selling?
At Palo Alto, it was next generation firewalls.
Firewalls, right.
Yeah.
Fine. I knew the company name, I just didn't know what they did. Okay, so you were offered, you said you were offered, was it that you didn't think you were open, and then when they approached you and said, we'll double your salary, you were like, brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think all my NDAs are run out. I was on like 27 grand a year OTE in 2013. So when I first got the role, I was like, oh, this is brilliant. But then I realized, hold on, this isn't a lot of money. And then when somebody offered me like 50K OTE, I was just like, yeah, let's go.
So what was that next role? What job title?
I was just BDR. Another company was at some startup in a US startup that had a lot of funding. And it's really funny speaking to people now. It's quite a famous startup in the Bay Area. It got acquired a few years ago, but people knew about it. So it was quite funny to, again, not really knowing about the world I was in, the tech world, how this was actually quite a big, important startup.
No, I noticed you didn't include this in your highlight role. So was it that it was just good or bad? Let's just summarize it. Good or bad?
It was good. It was nice.
Okay, so after that stint at the San Francisco Bay-based startup, that was good stint. Yeah. What's the next step that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so it was a company called Infoblox. So I joined Infoblox 2016 as a BDR, left 2021 as a director of BDRs and loads of other jobs as well. So that was like the role that really made my career.
And we the whole point, obviously, of the conversation is we tried to piece together the journey in which you've taken during your career. So you were at Palo Alto as a BDR, earning 27 and a half, whatever it was. You decided to move to another company for double the salary. How long was that stint?
about 18 months.
18 months, and it went well.
Yeah.
And then what was your rationale for leaving after 18 months?
The burn rate of the business was quite high, and I could see that the fun startup-y vibe was going.
You knew enough about SaaS to realize that at that current burn rate, the things were just going to get more challenging, let's say.
Yeah, and the leadership who were in place were, when things were good and they were getting a lot of funding, were all happy, cheery. But when the pressure got put on them, they couldn't handle it.
And what we don't have to talk about the company, but what was the tool? What was the product?
Mobile event apps. So have a conference, have an event app on your phone. So it didn't work at the time because people didn't really have internet when they went into like Earl's Court or Summit and or Olympia, their event venues in London. The internet was pretty bad. Like now, everybody has internet.
Well, they're known for having shockingly bad internet unless you pay for it.
Yes,
crafty.
Yeah, funny that. So that was like, now it would be a lot more. It would have been a lot more popular, I think, but just not at the time.
Okay, so 18 months doing that went pretty well, earning circa 50K. You decided to move to Infoblox as a BDR just for, I guess, stability in terms of you wanted a role that you could foresee a future at, basically.
Yeah, strong leadership. Like my manager, Lawrence Morrison, was a good leader. Wanted to be with him and the environment that he was building.
And how long were you there?
5.5 years.
Good. All right. Okay. So 5.5 years. Like, for obviously those listening will probably be largely in a sales role. Will know that 5.5 years is a good stint in a sales role. So you moved from BDR to SDR director in that time.
Yeah.
How many steps were there in between?
5, 6.
So every year.
Yeah.
Roughly speaking, you got promoted every year.
Yeah. So I went from BDR to being a AE, to being a manager, to being a senior manager, to being a director, to running Asia as well as EMEA. I was in charge of new logo, go-to-market strategy for EMEA. I was responsible for a global pilot of a commercial sales team. Any things that needed to get done were given to me to do.
We'll probably spend a good amount of time on this one because I think there's a lot to be taken from that 5.5 year stint, because I would say it's probably quite rare. I mean, you'll probably know better than I, but I'd say it's fairly rare to find someone who stays in a role for 5.5 years, especially in sales, but let alone marketing or any other sort of SaaS profession, because people tend to get the grass is greener, things don't go well, things go too well, and then they leave for better opportunities. So to be in role for 5.5 years, it would be good to talk about, I guess, why you were happy there, why you felt that you found your stride, and you really, like, I think you said you made a name for yourself in that sort of field.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot can be learned from actually sticking with things and progressing through a company and developing, rather than just going, right, I've hit 12 months, I want more money, or I've hit 18 months, time to move on.
Yeah. I think you get to a certain point where money is just money. It's going to get taxed, so you're not going to see more of it. And I think, and I don't live a crazy lifestyle, so it was more for me about feeling like I was progressing in what my roles and responsibilities were. So the funny thing was that my friends were telling me a few years ago how they wanted Infoblox to get rid of me a few months in because I wasn't really doing much, they said, and how my boss Lawrence just said, like, we need to give him some more time. So it was a slow burn, but then just started hitting my stride, started feeling valued, people started giving me more things to do because I was hitting my numbers, and so yeah, it just became this integral part of the company in Europe.
And when you say the initial perception of you was that you were not doing much, what did they mean by that?
I wasn't dialing enough was the thing. I was on LinkedIn, uh, and it was more so because I was just going to have key calling times, calling people at certain times. But um, I was still just figuring out my life at the time, and I'd just met my now wife, so things were starting to settle down a little bit more for me. So yeah, it was just needing to just settle down.
And this is probably a quite a big question. I don't know how you'll break it down into little chunks of what you learned, but what did you learn in that 5.5 years with respect to sales?
That I was actually good at something. So my whole career, I've always struggled to find something that I thought I was good at. So rugby, I was okay at. I wasn't ever going to be a professional. Was never going to work in a bookshop. Never going to do, just I thought I was going to be a teacher. Just didn't want, and then just didn't. Um, and it was actually good to know that I was good at something and that I had passion for it. And so yeah, it was just that was kind of the big thing for me, and that's why I stayed for so long. Was I was in an environment where I was good at it, people recognised that I was good at it, and it was a meritocracy. So I got rewarded more for being good at something, which was just what I wanted.
No, I can relate to that. Actually, I've always said that I'm good at a lot of things. I'm not great at. Well, I've got that sort of imposter syndrome, so I don't see myself as great at anything. Good, I can get along. I'm pretty decent at a lot of things, but yeah, I get the same sense of when you find something that actually you get the feedback of that sort of haptic feedback like you get from a phone of that you're good at something. You're like, oh, okay, I might stick around here.
Yeah, yeah, and I did, and there was lots of ups and downs. There was acquisite. The company got acquired, uh, but I was. It was really nice to actually be recognised because that was the thing. It was recognised and acknowledged that I had talent, and I was told that as well. It wasn't a secret, and then being given courses to go on. Um, people, I was a manager, but I was in the CEO and CMO meetings with the directors and above. And the only reason I wasn't it was still, there were still processes. You couldn't just jump from being A to B in title. There had to be steps in between. But I was in the same room as these people as just a manager. So it was, it gave me those kind of badges of approval.
No, I think it's there's something to be said, like we sort of touched on, about the fact of the whole job hopping thing. Like it's very, very common practice to job hop to get the salary increase. So, oh, you'll get a average 20% increase in salary if you move. So I think nowadays it's far more common for people to do 1 to 2 years move, 1 to 2 years move, rather than invest into a company.
Yeah.
So what would you, I guess, what would you say to someone who is doing well at a job and probably has built up the confidence and is umming and ahhing of like, maybe I should do something with this confidence and fight for a better salary elsewhere? What would you say?
Before you even do that, have you actually built what your career path is? So, do you know what you want to do and what you want to be and when you want to do it? And then have you spoken to your manager about that? Do you have a mentor? Do you have allies in the business? And it's very easy for people just to live in a bubble in their own heads and say, "Oh, I want 10% more," and it's like, okay, great, but what's your boss's vision for you as well? What are they? What are their plans? Um, and also the other thing as well, we live in a very self-centered society where it's like about me, me, me. Most people work for 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 person companies. You're you are sometimes like your pace that you want to move at is not going to be the pace the business wants to work at, and so you need to make sure that you understand what that looks like as well before you make any kind of crazy decisions to move.
That's actually that's an interesting one, because I think a lot of people tend to think that you have to keep your aspirations a secret from your manager or from the business, because if your aspirations are that you want to be in a different role elsewhere, not that company, you feel like they're not going to want you anymore and they're going to find a way to get rid of you. Whereas if you actually are very open about your career aspirations, I think that's why in a lot of interview processes people will ask the question of, where do you see yourself in 5 years? It's not for me. I 100%. I asked this in an interview I had 2 weeks ago for a web manager we're hiring, and I don't ask it because I want them to say, I want to be in this company in 5 years. I want to make sure I stay and I invest into the company. I want to understand how big they're thinking in
Yeah,
terms of like how hungry they are, where, if they've got an idea of where they want to go, and if it's at the company, great. If it's not at the company, also great, because you're using this as a stepping stone, which has to go well for you to get to the stepping stone after it.
yeah. I mean, I was looking around because I used to have a paper diary that I used to put my meetings in and stuff, and in the front of it, I had what my goals were. So my 5 year goals and about when I'm going to hit them. And I spoke to my boss, Frank, great guy, and I said, do you believe that these are achievable, or what in your eyes do I need to do to make sure that these are achievable? And so then he understood from my side about what I wanted to do and what I wanted to achieve, and he was able to tell me like, hey, that's too soon or that's not fast enough. And so that was good. And I haven't checked it for a while, but I was able to cross off a lot of the goals that I had because I was hitting them, and that's critical.
Yeah, so I would definitely be open. Don't be afraid to be open with your manager or senior leaders in terms of where you see yourself going, because it might be that you could save yourself the job hopping and having to learn new roles, and you might actually be able to stick where you are and get that progression that you wanted. So you were there 5.5 years.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to leave?
So I really wanted a global role. I've been there for 5.5 years, and I just felt that I needed to move to a different company to achieve it, be a global leader, for being an SDR global leader. There were the company had just been acquired by another private equity company. A lot of changes were happening, and I thought this is the right time to move on.
So how long were you at Solace?
18 months.
18 months. And in that 18 months, was it global SDR leader for it's sort of the entirety of that 18 months?
Yeah, and so we built the team from like 2, 3 SDRs to 23 managers over the 3 GOs. Produced more pipeline, more meetings than the company had ever seen. Start producing a talent engine as well for people to move into new roles in the company. So I achieved everything that I set out to achieve.
So you certainly proved the point that you could do a global SDR executive role.
Yeah, yeah,
And
100%.
what else in terms of what you said, that one of the main reasons were you wanted to prove that you could do that role. So what did you learn about yourself personally, but also professionally, but also personally, in terms of, because it kind of sounds more of a personal goal rather than professional. So personal in that I can do this, rather than professional in that I want to reach a certain amount of money or I want to reach a certain title.
Yeah, I always find that personal goals will achieve monetary goals as a consequence. And so, yeah, we just had we I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it, and I proved it, and it felt good to do it. But and so then once I did prove it, it was like, okay, now it's time to look for look for something else, and go and try and get more skills.
Two things I want to touch on. You gave a very, very good piece of advice there, which is the way in which you should think about the money. So you've got two ways. One is I want the money. That's the primary reason for a job or a career choice. Or you've got the other, which is what you're talking about, where it's like, I want the challenge, I want the reward of developing, I want the education, the upskilling,
Yeah,
which, as you said, money typically follows because once you get better at something, once you develop, you increase your level of knowledge, your level of skill, you tend to get promotions or you tend to get bigger roles that come with the money. So it's a really good piece of advice that of um, it was the reason I wanted to touch on it was sort of similar for me. I sort of stayed on the same salary for what felt like 5 or 6 years, and I took a lot of side steps just to build, add strings to my bow, whatever you want to call it. And then I got to a point where I had built up enough of that knowledge, and I had quashed the imposter syndrome a little bit more, and then the money came. And I think people should think of money like that more than the other way around of just chasing the money. The money will come, but think of it of, do you deserve the money? If you don't deserve the money from a skill, personable side of things, work on that first.
and I think the piece that people don't talk about enough, and because it's the ugly side of it, is what we do in SaaS and tech. We're paid more than 95% of the population. And so we believe, some people believe then, like, oh, I just need to go for more and more money. No, you need to realize about how privileged you are in the position that you are in. You are earning most likely more than your parents ever earned, unless they were also executives at places. But you are earning more than your parents. You're earning more than your grandparents. You've moved up the generational wealth ladder,
Mm.
um, and you're also going to be working for the next. Like, only some people are very lucky to retire in their 30s if they go to a company that IPOs.
Well, even 40s or 50s to your point, because what's the retirement age is like 68 now.
Yeah,
It's gonna be 70 before you know it. So
yeah,
even if you retire at 40 or 50, that's still a good innings.
yeah. And so it's like you've got to just take your how much do you really need every month, because the thing is you get used to it as well. So if you earn 100K, your way of your living will go up to that point. So if you're at 200K, so it always happens. I'm miserly, so I save up money, so I'm always all right. But for some people, it's like, yeah, they spend to where they are, and then, okay, but you're never happy.
Mm. Some good advice there on, I guess, motivations associated with money. Life's not all about money. We have that's actually been a topic that's come up in a few episodes. A lot of career journeys seem to be um, orientated around money in terms of why people leave and join certain companies. And I think you only now you can look back in retrospect or hindsight and go, probably shouldn't have done that. I was very unhappy at that role. Okay, they said it was more money, didn't really turn out to be that much more. So just think twice. The little takeaway there before we find out about your next role is life's not all about money.
Yeah,
You do some very good sit down, look at your finances, watch some YouTube videos, and actually think about how much you do need to live the lifestyle you want. I had a figure in my mind of, for me to live X lifestyle, I need Y amount. When I got to that amount, I went, I'm happy. I don't need millions. I don't need millions of pounds. I've got everything that I want. I'm able to, like you said, I'm able to put money away, be sensible things, and still do the things I want. I'm very happy. Life's not all about money, and yes, we can sit here because we're later in life, I know I'm only 32, but it's still 10 years later in life than a lot
Yeah.
of people probably listening. But yeah, life's not all about money. So you were there 18 months. Why did you leave? I think, I mean, I've got it on my screen here. I recognize the company.
Yeah.
I can imagine one of the reasons why you left was you were like, blimey, that's a very good company.
Yeah. So it was, so I ended up moving to Snowflake to help lead the EMEA sales development function there. And so it was two points. It was working at Snowflake, but it was also working with under Lars Nielsen, who is kind of the man, the goat when it comes to sales development in America, and really wanted to get under his learning tree with Travis Henry, who they work together. Building out sales development motions. So it's really about getting under that kind of environment.
Was that something that you pursued, as in you? Because it sounds as when you describe Lars and the structure there that it was a structure that you wanted to be a part of. So was it that you actively pursued and applied for the job, or was it a recruiter reaching out?
Yeah, I applied for the role, and then Lars was like, "Did we approach you?" I was like, "No, I applied." And he's like, "Well, because you're exactly the kind of profile we want for this." So that was nice. But I'd also the funny story was I'd got approached by a recruiter to go and work at Snowflake years before, when they just started out, and I was like, no, I'm okay. I've just got promoted to a manager at Infoblox. I wanted just to stick at it, and I kind of regret it now. I say it's not always about money, but I would have been it was pre-IPO, so I would have been very comfortable afterwards if I'd taken the job and was there during the IPO. But yeah, I applied for the role and got it.
Okay, so you applied for the role after 18 months at previous company. What was your title? What did you go in at?
It was director sales development, EMEA.
Yeah, cool. And we touched on the main reason for taking the job. Was that in terms of like that application process or thinking about your next move? Were you rock solid on that next move in terms of like knowing exactly what you wanted, the structure you wanted, the type of company, going back into more SaaS environment?
Yeah, so I'd proven that I could run a global team, and I felt that for me to um, move into more of a SaaS global uh, role next would be to go to a Snowflake of the world where, like, it's the Premier League. It's everything you want is there. So we had an SDR ops person for EMEA. We had somebody that did our training and enablement for our SDRs in EMEA. We had all the tools. We had, just everything you want. We had. So and then but then the expectations that came with it were huge, and so that was fun because it's like, okay, well, now you've actually got to deliver. So I thought moving into that environment would help me then for my next role, whenever that would come, to run that global organization.
So for those that might be wondering what the Premier League of SaaS companies does, what was it that you were selling?
Like data cloud storage, basically, at its core.
Super interesting stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Just about making sure. So all these kind of applications and databases, just having it in one place rather than loads of different places.
It's mad what you end up selling, isn't it? Like I bet at age 21 or whatever it was, you didn't see yourself going, you know what, I'm going to sell cloud-based data storage.
Yeah, I was just like, right, what Wellington boots am I going to buy for when I coach rugby? Well, that was all I was thinking about.
Yeah, mad. But okay, right. So Snowflake, how long were you there?
I was there for less than a year.
Less than a year. Okay, so what did you, in that rapid less than a year, what did you learn? Because you've touched on the fact that they had a lot of structure, and which is good and bad, but like what did you learn in that circa 9-ish months then?
Yeah, really about enterprise organizations and about how they fit into this bigger multi-billion dollar engine of revenue generation. That was a real. I said about Premier League. That's as big as it will get, unless you work for Nvidia or something like that, or Google. It's that kind of level of how you have to make an impact because the numbers are so big.
So describe the reporting structure in terms of who was your boss, how many people did you have in your team?
So I had about 80 overall headcount in my team. Had about 7-8 managers that reported under me. And then my boss was the VP of Sales Development, whose boss was the VP of Demand Generation, who's the boss of the CMO. So it was pretty.
I was interested. You mentioned it in a previous role, actually, that you reported into CMO. So I'm interested that there were a sales function reporting into a demand gen and a marketing function.
It's becoming more more.
It is, yeah, certainly nowadays
Yeah,
it's sales and marketing are one revenue engine, but back, even a few years ago, it was very much marketing and sales separate.
yeah. It's the SDR function was it's still, it reports under marketing. Yeah, it's just the way, the motion of how they built out the SDR function.
Interesting. I've not come across that. Interesting. Okay, so huge team. That gives you an idea of, or gives us an idea of the size of the business. If they had 80 in that team alone, and you had anywhere from 8 to 10 reports, direct reports, and then they would have had each of them sub reports. So roughly 9-10 months, however long it was. Why was it so short?
I got laid off. there was a reorg in the business, and so me and quite a few other people were affected. It was a year ago now.
Last in, first out sort of thing.
Yeah, it is what it is. It was just a lot of changes happened. So yeah.
But again, it's an interesting thing to talk about, because the career journey that we've discussed so far has been about largely just good things, right? Like good promotions and progressions and good performance and learning a lot. And the realities, unfortunately, of the sales function are that at some point in your career, you are almost certainly going to get laid off.
And so I was very lucky, and I've been doing other stuff over the last year that's been really successful. So it's not been it was sad, but just got to move on and keep going.
And then, in terms of what you do, you've spoken today about proving to yourself that you could do something, that the imposter syndrome thing that I sort of touched on as well. Did you take a step or two back initially, like mentally? How did you deal with that? That was because was that the first time you were laid off?
Yeah, it was the first time, and it was also during a period where there was just no jobs around. It was end of the last year.
The COVID slump, post-COVID slump.
It was really live. So I was like, I'll get a new job tomorrow, whatever. Like, I'll be fine. And no, just. And then also I was overqualified for roles that I was applying to. So I was speaking Latin to people that only spoke English, and I was talking to execs as well, and I couldn't. There was just such a mismatch. It's fine. Like, I know my worth, I know my value, and I'm not going to undersell myself to just because. So.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of what I was trying to get to, because there's two ways you can sort of tackle it. It's the defeatist and the opposite of defeatist, whatever the word doesn't come to my mind, but defeatist mentality of, I got laid off because I wasn't good enough, or I got laid off because of the reality that it was a reorg. It happens. I'm still bloody good at what I do, and what am I going to do with that? But it sounds like you touched on the fact that you put money away every month, so it sounds like that trait in your personality paid off?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it was all fine, and so like I do a lot of consulting stuff and now, and I run some very successful SDR leadership communities in America and EMEA. Um, so I've just dust myself down and dust myself off and just get cracking and do something else.
No, that's the only reason I touch on the putting money away is because I do think it's it's something that comes with age. But for those listening who are earlier on in their career, just because you're earning the money, don't spend it all. Like, put some of it away. That I think the general rule 50-30-20, 50% on your fundamentals, 30% on flexible spend. That's the stuff you enjoy, and then 20% put it away.
Yeah.
Because you don't know when reorgs are going to happen. You
Right.
don't know when the career that's going from strength to strength might have a stumbling block or an obstacle come around the corner.
Yeah. I mean, I had somebody who reached out to me last week on Sunday saying, "Hey, I think Sunday before Christmas, 23rd," and he went, "Yeah, I think there might be a reorg going on at the company. So can I share my CV with you to help for you to share it with people?" Sure. Sent it and went, "Yeah, I was," and then literally 2 minutes later, "Yeah, I was right. I've just been laid off. 23rd of December. Merry Christmas." And it's like you never know when it's going to happen, and you never know when people are just going to be heartless like that and not wait a few extra days
Yeah,
before laying you off.
it might feel like it's a grown up boring thing to do. Just put money away every month. You have absolutely no idea what's going to go on. And I tell you what, in terms of stress and anxiety, which are very, very high in sales anyway, knowing that you've got 6 months of fundamental expenses, your mortgage, your rent, your bills covered, that is a hell of a good thing to bring your anxiety levels down. Because you go, well, I'll tell you what, if all goes tits up, I got 6 months,
Yeah,
and that's a good place to be.
100%. And you know, being self-employed, what I'm doing right now, that's you've got to go and hunt for your own food every day, and then there's nothing better than looking now and seeing, okay, right, I've done quite well, and I don't have to work as hard because I've got a buffer. It helps mentally so much.
Okay, so that's I think that feels like a good point to do the roundup, the quick fire stuff. So, what would be your top three tips for those listening in terms of their career growth?
Yeah, so three things are: go beyond your job description, treat people with respect always, and never be the smartest guy in the room.
Okay, the treat people with respect, I completely agree. But the other two I want to touch on. So,
Sure.
go beyond your job description. Talk to me.
Yeah, so you've been employed to do a role. Great, awesome. Like, that sounds quite cold, but yeah, that was the reason why you were hired. And great, you're doing the job. But if you want to, if you want to progress in your career, you need to be finding other things that you can be doing, which you're not quote unquote being paid for, um, because that's then when leadership sees if people have passion, commitment, they go, they do things that are maybe that are not being monetarily paid for, but it's all about chipping in. And I get it. People say, well, no, that's not what I'm paid for, blah, blah, blah. But how do businesses realize that you have the ability to do the thing that you want to do if you don't do it first? They're not going to take the risk in this financial climate to give you something that you've not proven at all that you can do.
Yeah, I've never understood the mentality of it's not in my job description. Because I'm like, look, life isn't that black and white of if it's not explicitly written in my job description, I'm not doing it. That's not the reality of the world we live in. And that wouldn't have been the reality of any job in the history of careers. It's probably got better in terms of, I don't know, might offend some people here in terms of the woke society we live in terms of sticking to the exact verbiage in a job description, but it's probably a lot better than or a lot better now than it was. But why? Come on, have some flex.
And it's for people that are like that and say, I'm going to stick to my guns, Your bosses are going to talk to other people within the business, and when they ask about you, you're going to get the comment. It won't be explicit, but it's like doesn't really do beyond what their job description is. And for people,
And actually, when you want a reference for another job,
yeah,
that reference is going to be the most textbook Google off the shelf reference of
yeah,
they were a very astute, they were always on time, they were polite. That's your reference is
oh
going to
yeah,
be that.
yeah. Jamie worked at Dealfront from so and so to so and so. That was it. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that'll be it. That'll be the only thing you get, and then that
Yeah.
says a lot. And
Yeah, what you put in is what you get out.
yeah,
Karma goes, what goes around comes around. You know, whatever phrase you want to use.
100%.
And then the last one, what were in terms of never being the smartest guy in the room? What do you mean by that?
I find that if if I know all the answers to everything in a space that I'm in, then that's a bit worrying for me because I should always be learning and being challenged and improving. And I've been in roles before in the last few years where I was the smartest guy in the room and I didn't feel like I was progressing. I didn't feel like I was going to get better. Felt like I was getting stale. So I needed to be in environments where I was challenged and not not in an unprofessional way, but have my opinions and my ideas like talked through to make sure that we all have the best solution for the business. So I think you want to be in those kind of real tough environments, challenging environments. It really helps you.
That's yeah, that's interesting actually because it reminds me of a role that I was in. I was doing affiliate marketing, did it for about 2 years, just over 2 years, and you in that particular role, in that particular company, in that particular function, I could not step outside of the four walls of that role and that role's job description. And any creative ideas I had, it was like, it's just not how we do things.
Yeah,
And I mean, that role was probably only 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and it was probably the most junior the role could have been. And what I've managed to do in the role after that, and the role that's followed, which is the role I'm in now, I just felt completely caged. Like I couldn't use the creativity or the energy that I had, and I think it's one of the most important things is that you are stretched, you are challenged, you are able to challenge the
yeah,
narrative.
exactly. And it's how you get the best out of people. That's the big thing. And yeah, I just think you you have to have that environment. You have to be in it.
There's probably some sort of like saying, I think there is, it's like if you're not learning, you're this, and I can't remember what the saying is, but yeah, always be learning, always be challenging. And I think that'll put you in pretty good stead in terms of that career development. Okay, then. So, I think I know what the regret's going to be because you mentioned it earlier in our conversation. But what would be any regrets?
Yeah, I wish I'd been at Snowflake pre-IPO because I've met enough of those people now who are there pre-IPO, and uh, there was one guy who I met who is early 30s that's retired because he never has to work another day in his life. Uh, so I would never be. I would always have to work, but I think it would have been nice to have the house paid for and yeah, just be able to live carefree in that respect.
But if we think to the infamous story of lottery winners and what happened to them,
Yeah,
you could have got that nice lump sum and something could have happened and your life could have taken a more negative downturn than you sitting here. You're looking back going, oh, that money would have been brilliant. I could have paid this and this. You don't know what would have happened.
no, it could be like that. The what's his name? The chav who wasted all his money on
Snorted it all.
snorted it all. Yeah,
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
he's now back being a bin man. Yeah, it could have been him.
Yeah, look, and my point is, like, we've sort of touched on it. Money isn't everything, and you never know what could happen. Like,
Yeah, true.
to be blunt, you could have got a nice 500k payout, crossed the road, and got hit by a bus.
Yeah, exactly.
You just don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, then. So what's next for you then? What's the next step on the ladder?
Yeah, so I'm very happy doing the entrepreneurial life that I'm doing, running communities for SDR leaders currently. My my thing will be, my next operator role will be as a global SDR leader, but I'm not really in really a rush to find it because things are going well. I'm building this thing currently.
Ecosystem.
Ecosystem, and you know, something will come from it. Maybe great. If not, no problem. And no, my parents did ask me. I'm only 38, but my parents asked me over Christmas, like, yeah, but can you retire on this? Can you do this at 60? And I was like, Mom, Dad, come on, let me just enjoy this for now and what I'm doing and the challenge. Let's not think about that just yet.
Yeah, no, but it's wild how generational perceptions of careers and jobs and pensions and retirement it's different, isn't it? And then what's the? I think everyone has this. What's like your end goal? Like what when you sit here now, where would you like to get to before you stop working?
Yeah, it will be to be a CRO, Chief Revenue Officer at a SaaS company. I think it goes back to that piece of if and when I'm ready to go back into the full-time world of work, then I'll build out my career plan about how I want to get to it. But that, really making an impact to the bottom line, that's what I love to do. So, that would be the thing that I would aim to be before I turn 70.
Hey, you've got a while. You've got plenty of time.
Plenty of time. Exactly.
No rush.
No.
Right. Well, look, that brings us to the end of the conversation. Thank you for joining me for an episode. I hope that those listening have taken something from it. I think there's tons of information, insights, stories, actionable things that people can actually take away from that episode. A lot of them probably quite philosophical, actually, in terms of how you should approach things and the sensibilities of money and things like that. So hopefully those listening have enjoyed the episode. We'll be back either next week or next season. I don't know when this episode will fall in the seasons that we've got planned, but we'll either be back next week or in the next season. But thank you, David, for joining me. Hopefully it wasn't too laborious for you.
No, it was good fun. Thank you very much.
Good. Right, we will catch you in the next episode.